You are witnessing a hero's dignity being stripped away in real time, and you have no idea whose life is about to shatter forever. Commander Harlan Reed stood there, hands raised. The medals on his chest gleamed under the flickering fluorescent lights of a rundown gas station. A man who had hunted terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan and survived the icy depths of the North Atlantic was now staring down the barrel of a shaky Glock 19 held by a small-town deputy with a grudge. They thought he was a fraud. They thought he was just another drifter in a costume. They had no idea that the man they were putting in handcuffs was one of the Pentagon's most valuable assets. And they certainly did not know that this arrest would trigger a chain reaction, bringing down an entire police department and ending with a gavel slam that echoed through the halls of justice. This is not merely a story about an arrest. It is a story about the day the wrong officer messed with the wrong hero. The Georgia heat pressed down like a physical weight on the asphalt of the I-95 corridor. It was a sticky, humid heat that clung to your skin and made the air shimmer above the hood of the car. Commander Harlan Reed did not mind it. He had endured far worse in the suffocating jungles of Colombia and the scorching sands of Anbar province. Compared to those hellscapes, the humid embrace of the American South felt like a warm blanket. Harlan eased his black Ford F-150 off the highway and onto the exit ramp toward the small, blink and you'll miss it town of Oak Creek. The truck, immaculate and polished, hummed deeply as he decelerated. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. He was dressed in his service dress blues, the high collar stiff against his neck, the fabric perfectly pressed. He rarely wore the uniform outside official duties, but today had been different. He had just come from Arlington, burying a brother, a man he had pulled out of a burning Humvee in the past, only to lose him to cancer years later. The grief sat like a dull ache in his chest, heavy behind his ribs, but his face remained a mask of stoic calm. He needed fuel both for the truck and for himself. The drive back to Jacksonville was long, and he had not eaten since breakfast. He pulled into Rusty's Stop and Shop, a gas station that looked like it had not seen a renovation in decades. The pumps were old, analog dials spinning lazily, and the canopy overhead was rusted around the edges, leaking rust-coloured water onto the concrete. Harlan killed the engine. He stepped out, his polished dress shoes crunching on the grit. He was a formidable figure, 6 feet 4 inches tall, built like a linebacker carved out of granite, with skin the colour of deep mahogany. The rows of ribbons and medals on his left breast caught the dying sunlight. The silver star, the bronze star with V device, the purple heart, and the distinct trident insignia of the Navy SEALs. To anyone who knew what they were looking at, Harlan Reed was a walking legend. To the locals of Oak Creek, however, he was something else entirely. Harlan filled the tank, his movements precise and economical. He kept his eyes scanning the perimeter, a habit he could not break even if he wanted to. 2 cars were parked near the air pump, a Chevy Silverado with a "Don't Tread on Me" sticker and a beat-up Honda Civic. It was quiet, too quiet. He finished pumping, replaced the nozzle, and walked toward the convenience store entrance. The bell chimed as he pushed the glass door open. The air conditioning inside was blasting, a stark contrast to the humidity outside. Behind the counter sat a teenager with acne scars and a boredom that seemed terminal, scrolling aimlessly on a phone. The young clerk's name was Riley. In the back, near the coffee machine, stood a man in a tan uniform. Officer Bryce Langford was having a bad week. His wife had recently served him divorce papers. His sergeant had chewed him out for a missing report. And now he was stuck on patrol in a town where nothing ever happened. He was softening around the middle, with a receding hairline he tried to hide under his campaign hat. He held a lukewarm cup of coffee, his eyes narrowing as the door chimed. Langford watched Harlan walk in. He did not see the rank insignia. He did not recognize the trident. All he saw was a large black man in a fancy costume walking into his town's gas station like he owned the place. Langford's jaw tightened. He had seen stolen valor videos on the internet, people dressing up to get free drinks or discounts. It made him sick. It was an insult to the flag, he told himself, but deep down, it was something else. It was the way Harlan walked, head high, shoulders back, an air of authority that Langford felt he deserved, but never quite commanded. Harlan nodded politely to the officer as he walked past toward the energy drinks. "Evening, officer." Langford did not respond. He just tracked Harlan with his eyes, setting his coffee cup down on the counter with a little too much force. The liquid sloshed over the rim. Harlan sensed the hostility immediately. A prickly sensation on the back of his neck. The spidey sense that had saved his life a dozen times overseas. Ignore it, he told himself. Get a Gatorade, a bag of jerky, and get back on the road. He grabbed a blue Gatorade and a bag of spicy beef jerky, moving toward the register. "That's a nice costume." Langford's voice cut through the hum of the refrigerator units. It was a sneering, nasal sound. Harlan paused, his hand halfway to his wallet. He turned slowly, his face impassive. "Excuse me." Langford pushed himself off the counter, his hand resting casually, too casually, near the grip of his service weapon. He swaggered over, closing the distance, trying to use his physical presence to intimidate. He came up to Harlan's chin. "I said, that's a nice costume," Langford repeated, louder this time for the benefit of the terrified young clerk behind the counter. "Halloween is in October, buddy. You're a few months early." Harlan sighed internally. He did not have time for this. "This is a service dress blue uniform, officer. I'm a commander in the United States Navy. I'm just passing through." Langford let out a short, barking laugh. "Commander, look at you. You're too young to have that much fruit salad on your chest." He pointed a thick, sausage-like finger at the medals. "Silver Star? Really? Where'd you buy that? eBay? The surplus store down on Route 9? "I earned it in the Karangol Valley," Harlan said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously calm. "Officer, I don't want any trouble. I'm going to pay for my items and leave." "You aren't going anywhere," Langford snapped. He stepped in front of Harlan, blocking the path to the door. "I'm detaining you on suspicion of impersonating a military officer. Stolen Valor Act. It's a federal crime, you know." Harlan stared at him. The absurdity of the situation was almost funny, but the glint in Langford's eyes was dangerous. This was not about the law. This was about power. Langford needed to win. He needed to take someone down a peg to feel big again. "Officer," Harlan said slowly, keeping his hands visible and away from his waist. "My ID is in my back pocket. My military identification is in my wallet. If you let me reach for it, I can clear this up in 10 seconds. I bet you got a fake ID to match the fake suit, Langford sneered. Turn around, hands on your head. Now. You are making a mistake, Harlan warned, his voice steady. A very expensive mistake. Are you threatening me, boy? Langford's face flushed red. He unclipped the retention strap on his holster. I said hands on your head. Do it now, or I will light you up. The young clerk behind the counter dropped his phone. Officer Langford, maybe you should check his ID. Shut up, Riley, Langford shouted without looking back. Harlan calculated the odds. He could disarm Langford in less than 2 seconds. A wrist lock, a hyperextension of the elbow, and the officer would be on the floor before he could draw. But Harlan was not an insurgent. He was a commissioned officer. Assaulting a police officer, even a crooked one, would end his career and give them the excuse they needed to bury him. He had to play this by the book, even if Langford was burning the book page by page. Slowly, deliberately, Harlan raised his hands and interlaced his fingers behind his head. Good, Langford grunted. He moved behind Harlan, kicking his legs apart roughly. Spread them wider. He patted Harlan down aggressively, his hands searching for weapons, but mostly trying to provoke a reaction. He found the wallet and yanked it out, tossing it onto the dirty floor without even looking at it. You dropped my ID, Harlan said. It's fake anyway, Langford spat. He grabbed Harlan's wrists and slapped the cuffs on, tightening them excessively, the metal biting into the bone. You know, people like you make me sick. Real men died for that uniform, and you think you can just wear it to look tough. I am asking you to look at the ID on the floor, Harlan said, wincing slightly as Langford wrenched his arms up. Check the CAC card. Run the DOD number. I'll run whatever I want when I get you to the station, Langford said. He shoved Harlan toward the door. Move. As they exited the store, the humid air hit them again. Langford marched Harlan toward his cruiser, a black and white Dodge Charger parked haphazardly near the entrance. He shoved Harlan against the hood, the heat of the engine radiating through the uniform trousers. You have the right to remain silent, Langford droned, reciting the Miranda rights with bored indifference. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Harlan rested his forehead against the hot metal of the cruiser. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought of the phone call he would have to make. He thought of Admiral Victor Hale, the man who had pinned that trident on him in the past. Officer Langford, Harlan said, interrupting the recitation. I am an active duty officer. You should contact your watch commander immediately. Failure to verify my identity before transport constitutes a violation of my civil rights and unlawful detainment. Langford paused. For a second, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. The guy sounded educated, official. But then Langford looked at the uniform again. The sheer number of medals and his bias took over. It was too much. Nobody had that many medals. It had to be fake. A Navy SEAL, Langford scoffed. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Get in the car. He opened the back door and shoved Harlan inside. The hard plastic seat was cramped. As the door slammed shut, sealing him in the stale air that smelled of old vomit and pine air freshener, Harlan looked out the window. Langford was picking up the wallet from the gas station floor. He did not open it. He just shoved it into his pocket, smirking. Langford got into the driver's seat and keyed the radio. Dispatch, this is 4 Alpha 20. I'm 10:15 with one male subject at Rusty's, impersonating military personnel, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct. Copy that, 4 Alpha 20, the dispatcher crackled back. Harlan sat back, his wrists throbbing. Resisting arrest? Disorderly conduct? The charges were piling up, fabricated out of thin air. As Langford threw the cruiser into reverse, tyres screeching unnecessarily, Harlan looked straight at the partition separating them. He caught Langford's eyes in the rearview mirror. "You just ended your career, Langford," Harlan whispered to the empty back seat. The cruiser sped off toward the station, kicking up dust. But back at the gas station, Riley, the young clerk, was trembling. He picked up his phone. He had been recording the whole thing on Instagram Live since Langford started shouting. "Yo," Riley whispered to his followers. "Y'all ain't going to believe what just happened. Langford just arrested a Navy SEAL. This is going to be crazy." The video had a handful of views, then 20, then 50. By the time Langford's cruiser reached the Oak Creek Police Department, the video had been shared to a Stolen Valor Facebook group. But the comments were not what Riley expected. "That's not Stolen Valor," one comment read. "That's Commander Reed. I serve with him in Team 4. WTF is that cop doing?" The storm was not coming. It was already here. The Oak Creek Police Department smelled of stale coffee, floor wax, and aggressive apathy. It was a small brick building that doubled as the county lockup, a place where careers went to die and power trips went unchecked. Officer Langford shoved Harlan through the heavy steel door of the booking area. The handcuffs were still ratcheted tight, cutting off circulation to Harlan's thumbs. "Move it, Stolen Valor," Langford barked, pushing Harlan toward the booking desk. Behind the high counter sat Sergeant Vance Graves. Graves was a massive man, a former high school football star who had peaked at 17 and spent decades trying to relive the glory days through brute force. He looked up from a paperwork stack, his eyes scanning Harlan's uniform. "What do we have here, Bryce?" Graves asked, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Impersonating an officer, Sarge," Langford announced proudly, slamming Harlan's wallet onto the counter. "Caught him down at Rusty's. Full dress blues, medals he couldn't possibly have earned. Resisted arrest, too. Got mouthy with me." Harlan stood perfectly still. He knew the drill. In captivity training, the first rule was to maintain dignity and mental clarity. He was not a prisoner of war in a hostile nation. But right now, Oak Creek felt remarkably similar. "Name?" Graves asked, not looking at Harlan. "Commander Harlan Reed, United States Navy," Harlan replied, his voice calm and resonant. Graves looked up then, a sneer curling his lip. "I asked for your name, son, not your fantasy role-play character. Do you know how disrespectful it is to wear that uniform? My brother served in the Gulf. You think you can just play dress up?" "If you look in the wallet," Harlan said, nodding toward the leather billfold on the counter, "you will find my common access card and my driver's license. It will verify my rank and identity." Langford snatched the wallet before Graves could touch it. "I already checked it, Sarge. It's high-quality fakes. Probably got them from the same website he bought the medals." Langford opened the wallet, blocking Graves's view with his shoulder. He pulled out the ID card. It was real. Unmistakably real. The holographic chip, the weight of the plastic, the specific lamination. Langford felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. Deep down he knew, but he was already committed. If he admitted he was wrong now, he would look like an idiot in front of Graves. He would be the laughing stock of the department. He had to double down. Langford discreetly slid the military ID into his own pocket, leaving only the driver's license on the counter. See? Just a Florida license. No military ID. Harlan narrowed his eyes. He had seen the move. You just pocketed my CAC card, officer. That is government property. Shut your mouth, Langford shouted, spinning around and grabbing Harlan by the lapels of his dress blues. You speak when spoken to. Strip him, Graves ordered, bored. Get him in an orange jumpsuit. I don't want that fake uniform stinking up my holding cell. Bag it as evidence. This was the moment Harlan had dreaded. The uniform was not just cloth. It was a symbol. It bore the ribbons of campaigns where good men had died beside him. To have it stripped away by two small-town bullies was a violation that cut deeper than any physical blow. I will remove the uniform myself, Harlan said firmly. I ask that you provide a hanger so it does not touch the floor. Graves laughed, a harsh, barking sound. You aren't in a position to make demands. Langford, get the scissors. No, Harlan said. The word was quiet, but it carried the weight of a command. He stepped back, raising his cuffed hands. Uncuff me. I will comply with the booking process. But if you take scissors to this uniform, you will be destroying federal property, and I will ensure you are held accountable. Something in Harlan's eyes stopped Langford. It was the 1,000-yard stare, the look of a man who had seen death up close and made friends with it. Langford hesitated. Fine, Graves grunted. Uncuff him, but if he twitches, tase him. Langford unlocked the cuffs. Harlan rubbed his wrists where deep red welts had formed. Slowly, methodically, he began to undress. He removed the jacket, folding it with precision. He removed the tie. He placed the medals on the counter, handling them like religious artifacts. Langford watched, waiting for a mistake. When Harlan was down to his t-shirt and boxers, Langford kicked the pile of pristine clothes onto the dirty linoleum floor. Oops, Langford smirked. Harlan looked at the heap of blue fabric on the dusty floor. He looked at Langford. He did not scream. He did not attack. He just memorized Langford's face. You have made your choice, Harlan said softly. They threw him in a holding cell at the back of the station. It was a 10-by-10 concrete box containing a steel toilet and a wooden bench. The only other occupant was a greasy-haired local man named Earl, who was sleeping off a meth binge in the corner. Harlan sat on the bench, closing his eyes. He needed to make a move. Phone call, Harlan shouted toward the bars. I am entitled to one phone call. Langford walked by, swinging a set of keys. Phone's broken, Commander. Maybe we'll fix it later. Sit tight. Langford walked away, whistling. He felt good. He had shown the big guy who was boss. He went back to his desk, pulled the military ID out of his pocket, and looked at it. Commander, SEAL Team. The text was crisp. What if it is real? The voice in his head whispered. Langford panicked. He looked around. Graves was in his office. Langford walked to the shredder in the corner. The machine whirred to life. He fed the ID card into the teeth. It crunched, plastic snapping, the chip shattering. No ID, no proof. Now it was just his word against the drifters. But Langford had forgotten one thing. In the wallet, tucked behind a credit card, was something else he had not seen. He threw the wallet into the evidence bag and tossed it in the locker. Inside that wallet was a specific business card. It was heavy stock, cream-coloured, with a gold-embossed seal of the Department of Defense. On the back, handwritten in blue ink, was a direct number and a name. Admiral Victor Hale. and below that, a note. "Call me anytime, son. You earned it." While Harlan sat in the cold silence of the Oak Creek jail, the world outside was beginning to scream. Riley, the young clerk from the gas station, had not just posted the video to Instagram. He had posted it to TikTok, captioning it, "Cop arrests Navy SEAL for no reason." This is wild. The algorithm, a mysterious and powerful beast, caught the scent of conflict. In the first hour, the video had thousands of views. By the second hour, it had tens of thousands. But it was when the video hit the Stolen Valor subreddit and the US Navy SEALs Facebook group that the spark turned into an inferno. Veterans are a tight-knit community. They police their own. Usually, they are the first to call out fakes. They analyze ribbon placement, haircuts, and uniform fits with forensic precision. They were ready to tear the guy in the video apart. Instead, the comments section flooded with confusion, then shock, and finally rage. "Wait a minute," user Frogman_88 wrote. "I know that face. That's Harlan Reed. He was my platoon commander. That is not a fake." Or, "Can confirm," wrote another user. "He's active duty with Special Warfare Group 2. This cop is out of his mind. Look at the rack. He's wearing the silver star he got for the extraction in Yemen. This is insane." The video was ripped from TikTok and posted to X. A prominent military journalist picked it up. He had hundreds of thousands of followers and a direct line to the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office. He tweeted, "Oak Creek PD in Georgia appears to have arrested Commander Harlan Reed, a decorated Navy SEAL, on charges of stolen valor. I am reaching out to the Navy for comment. If this is true, heads are going to roll." The tweet went viral instantly. The phone lines at the Oak Creek Police Department began to ring. Dispatch Officer Brenda Miller, a woman who preferred solitaire to actual police work, stared at the switchboard. It was lit up like a Christmas tree. She answered the first call. "Oak Creek Police Emergency Line." "Yeah, I'm calling to report a kidnapping," a male voice said. "You guys kidnapped a US naval officer." Brenda hung up. "Prank callers," she muttered. She answered the second line. "Oak Creek Police. This is unacceptable. Free Commander Reed." She hung up again. She turned to Sergeant Graves. "Sarge, the phones are going crazy. People talking about that guy Langford brought in." Graves frowned. He was eating a donut, sugar dusting his mustache. "Ignore it. Probably his buddies trying to scare us." But the calls did not stop. And then the emails started. And then the fax machine, an ancient relic in the corner, began to screech, spitting out paper after paper. The atmosphere in the station shifted. It was not just random internet trolls anymore. A black SUV with government plates tore down the highway, heading south from Atlanta. Inside was Special Agent Cole Reynolds of the NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. He had been at home when his phone blew up. The order had come from the top, way up. Secure the asset. Ensure his safety. Do not let the locals process him further. Back in the cell, Harlan was meditating. He had detached himself from the anger. He was focusing on his breathing. Suddenly, the heavy door to the cell block opened. Langford walked in. He looked different now, paler, sweatier. He was checking his phone every few seconds. "Hey," Langford hissed through the bars. "Who are you, really?" Harlan opened his eyes. "I told you, Commander Harlan Reed." "My cousin saw a video online," Langford stammered, his bravado crumbling. "People are saying you're real. If you're real, why didn't you stop me? Why did you let me arrest you?" Harlan stood up, walking slowly to the bars. He towered over Langford. I didn't let you do anything, officer. You chose this. You had every opportunity to check my ID. You chose to destroy it. Langford's eyes widened. How did you know? I heard the shredder, Harlan said calmly. It has a distinct sound, and I know men like you. You destroy what you fear. Listen, Langford whispered, looking back at the door. We can fix this. I can let you out the back. We drop the charges, you just walk away. You get in your truck and leave. No harm, no foul, right? It was a desperate, pathetic offer. A bribe to silence the storm. No, Harlan said. What do you mean, no? Langford hissed. I'm offering you a free pass. I don't want a free pass, Harlan said, gripping the cold steel bars. I want justice. You humiliated me. You disgraced my uniform. And if you did this to me, a commander in the United States Navy, I can only imagine what you do to the civilians in this town who don't have my rank or my resources. I am not leaving this cell until my JAG officer arrives. You're making a mistake, Langford threatened, but his voice shook. Nobody comes to Oak Creek to help people like you. They're already coming, Harlan said. Can't you feel it? Outside, the rumble of an engine cut through the night. But it was not the NCIS agent yet. It was something louder. A group of local bikers, the Patriot Riders, a motorcycle club composed of veterans, had seen the alert. They had chapters all over Georgia. 15 Harleys roared into the gas station parking lot across the street from the police station. They were not there to attack. They were there to witness. They lined up their bikes, headlights pointing at the station, crossing their arms. Inside the station, Graves looked out the blinds. What the hell is going on out there? The phone rang again. Graves snatched it up. Oak Creek Police, get off my line. This is Admiral Victor Hale, Commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. A voice boomed on the other end. It was a voice that commanded fleets. I am speaking to the officer in charge. Graves froze. The donut dropped from his hand. This is Sergeant Graves. Sergeant. Hale's voice was like ice. You have a man in your custody named Harlan Reed. If he is not released to the custody of NCIS agent Cole Reynolds, who is minutes away, I will personally fly down there and have the National Guard dismantle your station brick by brick. Do you read me? Graves swallowed hard. He looked at Langford, who had just walked back into the room, looking like a ghost. Langford, Graves whispered, covering the receiver. What did you do? I thought he was fake, Sarge, Langford whimpered. He's got the Admiral of the Navy on the phone, Graves roared. The Admiral? Langford's knees gave out. He slumped into a chair. The front door of the station burst open. It was not the NCIS agent yet. It was a woman in a sharp grey suit holding a briefcase. She walked in with the confidence of a predator entering a petting zoo. Clara Bennett, attorney at law, she announced, slamming a card on the counter. I represent Commander Reed. I demand to see my client immediately, and I advise you both to stop talking because right now every word you say is adding another zero to the lawsuit I am about to file. Langford looked at Graves. Graves looked at the phone. The blue wall of silence was not going to save them. The karma was not just hitting back. It was bringing the whole U.S. military-industrial complex with it. Harlan heard the commotion from his cell. He sat back down on the bench and smiled. The show was just beginning. The double doors of the Oak Creek Police Department did not just open. They were pushed wide by a force of nature. Special Agent Cole Reynolds did not look like a cop. He looked like an accountant who could kill you with a pencil. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Langford's annual salary, and his badge hung from a chain around his neck. The gold shield of the NCIS glinted under the harsh station lights. Behind him, 2 state troopers flanked the entrance, their broad hats casting shadows over their eyes. The local police station, once a fortress for Langford and Graves, had just been breached. Reynolds walked straight to the desk, ignoring Graves entirely. He looked at Clara Bennett, Harlan's attorney. "Agent Cole Reynolds, NCIS. Is he safe?" "He's in a holding cell," Clara said, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "They refused to let me see him until minutes ago. They claim the cameras in the booking area were malfunctioning during the arrest." Reynolds turned his gaze to Graves. It was a look of pure, unadulterated disappointment. "Sergeant, I have a federal warrant for the immediate custody of Commander Harlan Reed. Open that cell now." Graves, who had spent decades intimidating drunk drivers and teenagers, found his throat dry. He fumbled for the keys. "We were just processing him, Agent. Standard procedure." He was uncooperative. "Open the cell," Reynolds repeated, softer this time, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Langford stood in the corner, trying to blend into the filing cabinets. He felt a sudden, violent urge to vomit. The reality of his situation was crashing down on him like a collapsing building. He watched as Graves led Reynolds and the attorney down the hallway. When the cell door clanked open, Harlan was standing in the center of the room. He was still in his undershirt and boxers, his feet bare on the cold concrete. His dress uniform was still in a pile on the floor of the booking room where Langford had kicked it. Reynolds stepped into the cell. He did not salute. That was not protocol in this environment, but he offered a hand. "Commander, I'm Special Agent Reynolds. I'm here to get you out." Harlan shook the hand firmly. "Took you long enough, Cole." "Traffic," Reynolds said, cracking a rare, thin smile. "Let's get you dressed." They walked back into the booking area. The silence was deafening. Every officer in the room was staring at the floor, terrified of making eye contact. Harlan walked to the pile of his uniform. He picked up the jacket, shaking off the dust. He picked up the medals. "Officer Langford," Harlan said. Langford flinched. "Yeah, my wallet," Harlan said. "And my identification." Langford froze. The room seemed to tilt. "I put it in evidence." "Get it," Reynolds ordered. Langford walked to the evidence locker with the gait of a man walking to the gallows. He retrieved the plastic bag. He handed it to Reynolds. Reynolds opened the bag. He pulled out the wallet. He checked the slots. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. "Where is the common access card? Where is the military ID?" "It wasn't in there," Langford lied. The lie was thin, brittle. He did not have it on him. "That is a lie," Harlan said calmly. He was buttoning his shirt now, restoring his dignity one button at a time. "I handed it to you. You put it in your pocket. Then, while I was in the cell, I heard the distinct sound of a cross-cut shredder." All eyes turned to the shredder in the corner of the room. It sat there, innocent and beige, a plastic bin full of secrets. Reynolds did not ask Langford. He turned to one of the state troopers. "Secure that shredder. Bag the entire bin. We'll have the lab reconstruct every scrap of paper in there. If we find federal identification in that bin, Officer Langford, I am going to add destruction of government property and obstruction of justice to the list of charges." Langford made a sound that was half whimper, half sob. "I panicked. I thought it was fake. You shredded it, Graves shouted, turning on his subordinate instantly. You idiot. You told me he didn't have ID. You told me to handle it. You said get rid of the problem, Langford screamed back, the pressure breaking him. I never said shred evidence. Gentlemen, Reynolds interrupted, his voice cutting through the bickering. You both have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it. Ooh. Just then, the front doors flew open again. A short, balding man in a suit that was 2 sizes too big rushed in, sweating profusely. It was Chief of Police Elliot Dawson. He had been at a fundraiser when he got the call from the mayor, who had gotten a call from the governor, who had been contacted by the Secretary of the Navy. What is happening here? Chief Dawson demanded, trying to regain control of his station. Agent Reynolds, surely we can work this out. It's a misunderstanding. Officer Langford is a good man. He just made a judgment call. Chief, Reynolds said, stepping in front of Harlan. Your officer arrested a decorated SEAL commander because he didn't like the way he looked. He assaulted him, unlawfully detained him, and destroyed federal property. And right now, there are news vans parking on your lawn. Chief Dawson looked out the window. The flashing lights of the police cars were now being joined by the bright white LEDs of news cameras. The story had broken locally. The Patriot riders were revving their engines. A crowd of locals was gathering, smartphones raised like torches. Harlan finished tying his tie. He put on his jacket. He smoothed the ribbons. He was Commander Reed again. I am ready to leave, Harlan said. He looked at Langford one last time. Langford was slumped in a chair, head in his hands, weeping softly. Officer Langford, Harlan said. Langford looked up. His eyes were red and puffy. You asked me earlier if I knew what real men died for. They died for the Constitution. They died so that men like you couldn't abuse your power against citizens like me. You disgraced your badge today. Don't ever wear it again. Harlan turned and walked out the door, Reynolds and Bennett flanking him. As he stepped out into the humid Georgia night, the flashbulbs erupted. The bikers cheered. A roar of engines and voices. Harlan did not smile. He did not wave. He walked straight to the black SUV waiting for him. He was free, but the war for Oak Creek was just starting. In the aftermath, Oak Creek, Georgia, was no longer a sleepy town on the I-95 corridor. It was the center of the American news cycle. CNN, Fox News, SNBC. They were all running the same B-roll footage. The shaky Instagram video from Riley at the gas station showing Langford shoving Harlan against the car. The headline on the bottom of the screen read, Hero in handcuffs, Navy SEAL arrested for stolen valor by local police. Public outrage is a powerful fuel, but when you mix it with the military community, it becomes nuclear. The Oak Creek PD Facebook page had to be taken down after receiving tens of thousands of comments in hours. The phone lines were disconnected. The mayor of Oak Creek held a press conference on the steps of City Hall. He looked pale. We are conducting a full internal investigation, the mayor stammered into a forest of microphones. Officer Langford has been placed on paid administrative leave pending the outcome. Paid leave, a reporter from Atlanta shouted. He shredded a federal ID. Why is he not in jail? We are following protocol, the mayor said weakly before being ushered away by aides. But the protocol was not going to save them, because Clara Bennett, Harlan's lawyer, was not just suing for unlawful arrest. She was digging. Bennett hired a team of private investigators to look into Officer Bryce Langford's past. They set up a tip line. If you have been harassed or falsely arrested by Officer Langford, call us. Soon, the phone was ringing off the hook. It turned out Harlan was not the first. He was just the first one with the rank and resources to fight back. There was a college student from Florida who had been arrested for DUI despite blowing a 0.00. Langford had claimed he smelled marijuana, impounded the car, and the cash in the glove box had mysteriously vanished. The charges were dropped later, but the student lost his scholarship. There was a single mother who had been pulled over for a broken tail light. Langford had kept her on the side of the road for hours, searching her car without a warrant, threatening to call Child Protective Services if she did not cooperate. There were dozens of them, a pattern of predation. Langford targeted out-of-towners, minorities, and people he thought could not fight back. He was a bully with a badge, protected by a system that prioritized protecting its own over justice. But now, the FBI was involved. Because he had destroyed a military ID and violated the civil rights of a service member, the Department of Justice opened a parallel investigation. They did not just look at the gas station incident. They subpoenaed everything: body cam footage from recent years, dash cam logs, arrest reports. What they found was a rot that went deep. Sergeant Vance Graves was not just a lazy supervisor. He was signing off on Langford's false reports. He was covering for him. It was a racket. They were seizing cash from drug stops that were actually just innocent travelers, using civil asset forfeiture laws to pad the department's budget. Before long, the hammer dropped. Harlan sat in a hotel suite in Atlanta, watching the news. He was dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a t-shirt. He looked tired. The media attention was exhausting. He hated the spotlight. He just wanted to go back to his team. "Turn it up," he said to Agent Reynolds, who was sitting on the couch working on a laptop. On the TV, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia was standing at a podium. Today, a federal grand jury has returned a 12-count indictment against Bryce Langford and Sergeant Vance Graves, the U.S. Attorney announced. The list of charges was staggering: deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction of justice for the shredding of the ID, falsifying federal records, kidnapping, wire fraud. Furthermore, the attorney continued, we are launching a consent decree investigation into the entire Oak Creek Police Department to determine if there is a systemic pattern of unconstitutional policing. The camera cut to the Oak Creek station. It was being raided. FBI agents in windbreakers were carrying out boxes of files. Computer towers were being loaded into trucks. And then the shot everyone was waiting for. The back door of the station opened. Officer Langford walked out. He was not wearing his uniform. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed behind his back, and his ankles were shackled. He looked small. The arrogance was gone. He looked at the cameras, and for a split second, he looked terrified. Behind him came Sergeant Graves, looking furious, shouting at the agents, but being shoved into the bed of a federal transport van just the same. In the hotel room, Reynolds closed his laptop. They denied bail. Flight risk. Langford had tried to buy a ticket to Cancun using his mother's credit card. Harlan shook his head. He ran. He tried to. Didn't make it past airport security, Reynolds said. Turns out he's on the no-fly list now. Harlan stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. He did not feel joy. He did not feel triumph. He felt a solemn sense of closure. "It wasn't just about me, Cole," Harlan said quietly. "No," Reynolds agreed. "It never is. You just happened to be the rock that broke the lawnmower." But the drama was not over. The criminal trial was coming, and Langford, desperate and cornered, was not going to go down without dragging everyone else with him. He had one card left to play, a black book he had kept hidden in his garage, a book that contained the names of local judges and council members who had benefited from his confiscations. Langford was going to sing, and the song was going to burn Oak Creek to the ground. The federal courthouse in Savannah, Georgia, was a fortress of limestone and judgment. In the period following the arrest, the black book, a battered notebook Langford had kept hidden in his garage, had detonated like a bomb. Terrified of the mounting federal charges, he had tried to cut a deal exposing a long-running scheme where the mayor and Chief Dawson targeted out-of-towners for cash seizures. Langford thought offering up the big fish would save him. He was wrong. The trial of United States versus Bryce Langford began on a rainy Tuesday. The courtroom was packed with veterans, bikers, and active duty SEALs sitting in silent solidarity behind Commander Harlan Reed. Assistant U.S. Attorney Lena Hart, known as the Shark, wasted no time. She stood before Langford, who looked gaunt and shaken in his cheap suit. "Mr. Langford," Hart began, holding up a plastic bag containing the reconstructed remnants of Harlan's common access card. "You claimed you shredded this ID because you panicked. You claimed you thought it was fake." "I did," Langford stammered. "It didn't look right. I was scared." "Scared?" Hart raised an eyebrow. "Let's listen to what you really felt." She signaled the tech specialist. A hush fell over the room as audio from a rookie officer's body cam, accidentally left recording in the locker room, played over the speakers. "I don't care if it's real, Sarge," Langford's voice sneered through the static. "If we shred it, it's his word against ours. Who are they going to believe? A cop or a black guy passing through?" The gasp in the courtroom was audible. The jury looked at Langford with undisguised disgust. The defense's panic had just been exposed as cold, calculated malice. Langford slumped in his chair, realizing his own arrogance had buried him. Then it was Harlan's turn. He took the stand not with anger, but with a quiet, devastating dignity. "Commander Reed," Hart asked, "how did that arrest affect you?" Harlan looked at the jury. "I have served in Afghanistan and Iraq. I know who the enemy is in those places. But standing in that gas station, handcuffed by a man sworn to protect the Constitution, that was a betrayal deeper than any shrapnel." He paused, his gaze drifting to Langford. "If he could do that to a commander in uniform, I lay awake thinking about what he did to the people who didn't have my rank or resources. I am here for them." The defense tried to paint Langford as a victim of a corrupt system, a man just following orders, but the jury was not buying it. Deliberations lasted only hours. "We find Bryce Langford guilty on all counts." The 12 guilty verdicts rang out like tolling bells. Deprivation of rights, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, wire fraud. But the true climax came at the sentencing hearing. Judge Elias Thorne, an old-school jurist with zero tolerance for corruption, presided. Langford stood before him weeping openly. "Your Honor, please, I have a family. I made a mistake. Judge Thorne peered over his spectacles, unmoved. Mr. Langford, you asked for mercy, yet you gave none. You turned the badge, a sacred symbol of trust, into a weapon for your own ego and greed. When an officer commits a crime, they don't just break the law, they shatter the foundation of society. The judge picked up his gavel. The room held its breath. For kidnapping, 25 years. For deprivation of civil rights, 10 years. For obstruction of justice and racketeering, 23 years. Thorne's voice was like grinding stone. These sentences are to run consecutively. You are hereby sentenced to a term that will keep you behind bars for decades. You will not be eligible for parole until you are 85 years old. Bang! The gavel strike echoed like a gunshot, sealing Langford's fate. His knees buckled, and he collapsed into the arms of the U.S. Marshals. As he was dragged away, wailing, the rows of veterans in the gallery remained silent. Justice had been slow, but it had arrived with the weight of a sledgehammer. The severe sentence made national headlines. It was unprecedented for a non-violent arrest case, but the message was clear. The badge is a shield, not a sword. If you use it as a sword, you will fall on it. The fallout in Oak Creek was total. Based on the evidence provided, the mayor was sentenced to 12 years for racketeering. Chief Elliot Dawson got 15. Sergeant Vance Graves took a plea deal for 8 years. The entire Oak Creek Police Department was dissolved by the state of Georgia. Policing duties were taken over by the county sheriff's office, which brought in body cameras, oversight committees, and a new culture of transparency. The gas station, Rusty's Stop and Shop, became a strange sort of landmark. People stopped there not just for gas, but to take pictures. Riley, the young clerk who filmed the video, used his internet fame to launch a crowdfunding campaign for a local legal aid clinic. He raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in a short time. But for Harlan Reed, the end of the trial was just the beginning of the healing process. Sometime later, Harlan returned to Oak Creek. He was not in uniform this time. He was driving the same black Ford F-150. He pulled into the gas station. It had been renovated. The pumps were new. The rust was gone. He walked inside. Riley was there now, the manager. "Commander," Riley beamed, coming around the counter to shake his hand. "Good to see you, sir." "Good to see you, Riley," Harlan smiled. "Place looks good. Business is booming," Riley said. "We got rid of the bad vibes." Harlan bought a Gatorade. Blue, just like before. He walked outside and stood by his truck. He looked across the street at the old brick police station. It was boarded up now, a for sale sign on the lawn. The weeds were growing through the cracks in the sidewalk where Langford had marched him in handcuffs. Harlan took a sip of his drink. He felt a lightness in his chest that had not been there for a long time. He thought about Langford. He was currently in USP Coleman, a high-security federal prison in Florida. Reports said he was not doing well. Former cops do not make many friends inside, especially not corrupt ones. He was in protective custody, spending 23 hours a day in a cell much smaller than the one he had put Harlan in. Karma had not just hit back, it had finished the job. Harlan's phone buzzed. It was a text from Admiral Victor Hale. "Selection board results are out. Congratulations, Captain Reed." Harlan stared at the screen. "Captain, the next step toward Admiral." He looked up at the sky. It was a clear, brilliant blue. The humidity had broken. He got back in his truck. He had a team to lead. He had young SEALs to train. He had a country to serve. He started the engine, the rumble of the V8 drowning out the ghosts of Oak Creek. As he pulled onto the highway, merging into the traffic of I-95, Captain Harlan Reed did not look in the rearview mirror. He only looked forward, because that is what heroes do. They endure the storm and they keep driving. And that is the incredible, true-to-life inspired story of how one corrupt officer's arrogance led to the downfall of an entire corrupt system. It is a powerful reminder that rank, badges and titles do not make you a leader. Character does. Officer Langford thought he was untouchable, but he forgot that in the face of truth, lies always crumble. A lengthy prison term is a long time to think about a Gatorade and a bag of jerky, but it is a fitting end for a man who betrayed the oath he swore. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about military heroes, law enforcement takedowns, and instant karma, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. What do you think? Was the sentence too harsh? Or did Langford get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and remember, respect is earned, not demanded. See you in the next one.